In the summer of '83, one of the darkest and most terrifying episodes in sports history unfolded, impacting the entire world and forever remembered as the darkest night of boxing. That afternoon, as everyone bought their tickets to witness the bouts, no one could have imagined they were about to witness a massacre that would prematurely end the promising career of a young fighter, devastating his life forever.
The cheekbones and the eyelids and all around this whole area just began to blow up and turn purple. And you could see that something severe was happening.
At 21 years old, the greatest dream of a young American fighter with Irish ancestry was on the verge of becoming reality. His record was impeccable, boasting 14 fights and 14 victories, with 11 of those by knockout. This young man's destiny seemed clear, the junior middleweight world championship belt.
He probably has more power than any other person in the sport. I'm not talking about power in the ring, but power outside the ring.
Billy Collins was an eminent talent, but he was destined to face a Puerto Rican opponent. However, this adversary was determined to achieve victory at any cost, committing a foul and inhuman act that would forever stain the history of the sport with blood.
Eu até postei dia desse, cara, falando sobre isso, que o cara perdeu a vida em uma luta dessa. Tem documentário que fala, eu esqueci o nome desse documentário, depois vocês procuram, que o cara morre em cima do ringue.
Attention, today we will recount an extremely heavy fight with tragic consequences. That may trigger emotional responses, so please be prepared. You are very welcome to another Strike Story production. If you are a martial arts lover, subscribe to join this hunt in the world of fights. William Ray Collins Jr. was born on September 21, 1961, in Nashville, United States. He came from a simple, hardworking family in Tennessee. His father, Billy Collins Sr., was a former professional boxer who left his career to become a truck driver. Mr. Collins aspired for his son to follow in his footsteps and achieve what he himself had aimed for, hoping one day to become a world champion. Nicknamed Billy Collins Jr. in reference to his father, he developed a deep love for the sport, and with the support and guidance of his own father, he honed all his natural talent as a boxer.
Billy, did you have that feeling that you had something to prove that first time in with your dad? Here was the opportunity?
You know, I figured, if he taught me all this stuff, I was going to try to use some of it on, but...
Billy Collins Jr.'s ascent in the boxing world was impressive. Had proved to be a high-quality fighter from his initial victory over Kevin Griffin. Collins Jr. continued to display gigantic potential in his fights, even facing opponents far more experienced than him, such as Bruce Strauss, who had 95 fights in his career. 2 years had passed since then, and Collins had been progressing in the rankings of 69 kilograms boxers. The time came to face more difficult challenges, like Rick, who was also undefeated and whose story was very similar to Billy Collins's.
Others in their backgrounds, and they are the kind of kids who have a lot of respect for their dads, both of whom were boxers and began their careers, Billy Collins and Ricky Witt. There is Irish Billy Collins from Nashville, Tennessee. He's unbeaten in his 10 fights with 8 knockouts along the way, and his father, Billy Collins, was a ranked fighter in his time. Ricky Witt, now living in Philadelphia, unbeaten in 14 bouts with 11 knockouts, and likewise a father who was an outstanding amateur boxer and got Ricky started in his time.
The fight began with both boxers showcasing their skills, employing dodges and counterpunches, illustrating why they were there.
Oh, he is a former inter-service champion. Billy Collins, a 3-time Tennessee, get missed with a punch. In other words, they're fighters that get hit a lot, offensive fighters. Don't worry too much about getting hit as long as they hit the other guy. Oh, he is a former inter-service champion. Billy Collins, a 3-time Tennessee, get missed with a punch. In other words, they're fighters that get hit.
Rick, on the other hand, a southpaw with precise punches, sought body shots, because when attempting headshots, he always met with Billy Collins' counterpunches. Early in the second round, Billy landed a precise combination that made Rick falter. opening an opportunity to consolidate his advantage in the ring. With his refined control and precision, Billy sought to seize this moment, which could be the last moment of this fight.
Same kind of a fight. These guys really nailing each other. Collins doing most of the nailing in that exchange. It's something to make him into play in this fight at the maturity level. You have to remember that 27 years.
However, Rick returned with determination and began to score, forcing Collins to adopt evasive strategies to escape the Americans' attacks. While trying to protect himself from Rick's blows, Collins remained calm, seeking an opening to counterattack and regain control of the fight.
Here in LA, and this is the same kind of a fight. These guys really nailing each other. Collins doing most of the nailing in that exchange. It's something to make him into play in this fight at the maturity level. You have to remember.
Suddenly, during the fourth round, Rick, with his face already visibly altered by previous blows, was subjected to a series of powerful punches that forced the referee to stop the fight. His determination was evident, but exhaustion and accumulated injuries made it impossible for him to continue without risking his own safety. The nervous audience, impressed by the fighter's bravery, witnessed the sudden end of an intense and emotional clash.
Left was right back. Collins got a wobble. Witt is wobbled. He is in difficulty. And has been stopped by Larry Hazard as Witt was wobbling backwards. Billy Collins and one more combination of Larry Hazard.
Billy Collins had everything he needed to be a great success: talent, motivation, for he had never lost a fight before. He was heading towards fame, and after this, he won 3 more bouts against Dennis Horn, Steve Johnson, and Fernando Frank, winning the fights by knockout. He had won 14 consecutive fights and seemed ready for a bright future. Bob, his mentor and boxing promoter, had big plans for him, and at 21 years old, Billy had many opportunities ahead as he was just beginning his professional boxing career. Titles and a lot of money seemed guaranteed, but the family man Billy Collins soon married Andrea, a longtime girlfriend who was pregnant with his child. She was 18 at the time.
When I first met him and started going out with him, he wouldn't take me in his house, and he would make up excuses. He'd always have an excuse for something. But then finally, after we had been together once, I was just embarrassed. I don't want anybody to know how I live.
Billy Ray Collins entered the ring with Louis Resto. Andrea was home in Nashville, 9 months pregnant. It was just another fight, and she had every expectation that he would win.
With the legendary Madison Square Garden as witness on Thursday, June 16, 1983, an unforgettable night for boxing, for both good and bad memories. Roberto Duran, Minos de Piedra Hands of Stone, won the world title in the 3rd division, further expanding his brilliant boxing career. On the other hand, it would mark the beginning of the end of Collins Jr.'s promising career. Apparently, it would be a quiet night for the Irishman, who arrived at this iconic venue of world boxing with a record of 14 victories and 11 knockouts in total. His opponent was Luis Resto, who displayed a record of 20 wins and 2 losses, with only 8 knockouts in his career. It's even speculated that a victory for Billy Collins would put him very close to facing the winner of the main event between Davey Moore and Roberto Duran. The future looked bright for the kid from Nashville. However, no one could have imagined what would happen that night and 9 months later. dispute between Collins Jr. and Luis Resto did not transpire as expected. As the rounds went on, Luce's performance changed drastically, suddenly acquiring a devastating punching power. His blows rocked Collins, who bravely resisted through all 10 rounds of the bout. However, his eyes showed the severe impact he had suffered. Clearly, Billy Collins Jr. was defeated in that fight. Luis celebrated his career's pinnacle like never before, and in an apparent gesture of courtesy, extended his hand to his opponent to greet him. At that moment, Billy Collins' father, using his experience as a sports professional, noticed something suspicious about the gloves of the man responsible for his son's damage and promptly revealed his discovery. The scandal erupted. The then chief inspector of the New York State Athletic Commission confiscated Luce's gloves and subjected them to a thorough investigation involving both the glove manufacturer Everett's and his trainers, as well as the New York Police Department. The outcome revealed one of the main reasons behind Billy Collins Jr.'s shocking defeat.
Was unanimous in favor of Luis Resto, but shortly after the fight, Collins' handlers charged that Resto's gloves had been tampered with, that some of the required padding had been secretly and illegally removed, adding extra impact to Resto's punches. The New York State Athletic Commission apparently was suspicious, and they impounded Luis Resto's gloves.
Investigation showed that 50% of the foam from Luis Resto's gloves had been removed through holes in the internal padding. This made the gloves less cushioned, and some parts were filled with plaster. In this way, the punches of a fighter with limited strength like Luis Resto seemed to inflict the same damage as Mike Tyson's punches. The consequence was a 1-year suspension, and at that time, Luis Resto had his license permanently revoked, along with his trainer Carlos Panama Lewis and another member of his corner. It was Luce's own trainer who, slyly, initially prevented the gloves and bandages from being checked, which is standard in all professional boxing fights, claiming he needed more time to prepare his fighter when the inspector on duty visited his dressing room to perform the check. But for Billy Collins, things were much worse. Billy Collins faced devastating consequences, and after this confrontation, he consulted various ophthalmologists only to receive the dreaded diagnosis of an iris tear in his right eye, condemning his vision for the rest of his life. His boxing career was undone, and his very existence compromised. Collins' life entered a complete collapse. He couldn't find a place in the professional world outside of sports and ended up facing problems in his relationship with his wife and family.
When he got back, things started getting worse and worse between us. Started hitting me a lot, and he would cry for days. He did drugs, he drank.
For the first time, Collins began to drink alcoholic beverages. He had to accept a new job outside of his boxing area in painting. However, this occupation lasted less than 2 months, as his employers were uncomfortable placing a visually impaired worker on a scaffolding structure. Dissatisfied with this, he took it out on his 18-year-old wife, resulting in her leaving with their young daughter, Alicia, back to her parents' house. Billy Collins was no longer the same man, making even genuine smiles a challenge for him, entering a deep melancholic state and being diagnosed with severe depression. Medications and alcohol became his companions from then on. The sounds and shouts of the crowd inside the ring were replaced by the clinking of empty bottles in dark alleys, which few can endure. Melancholy is like a constant shadow that envelops the soul when emotional, and psychological challenges penetrate the heart, as if it were a vague void or even an undefined longing that cannot be filled. It embraces the individual's mind and asks full of dark reflections, undermining hope and obscuring prospects for the future. On March 7, 1984, months after being destroyed by Luis Resto inside the ring, Collins Jr. crashed his car at high speed and tragically lost his life.
What they were arguing about, Billy stood up to his father.
Drunk and angry, Billy drove away into a ditch known in the area for the past 100 years as Collins Creek.
On the night of the accident, he had argued with his father and was very drunk. The medical examiner's report stated that his blood contained 0.09% alcohol. Anything above 0.05% is considered dangerous for driving. Those close to him believe he may have done it on purpose, as he had been severely depressed after suffering serious eye problems following the fight, devastated by his son's death. Billy Collins Sr. convinced the then Manhattan prosecutor to seek legal punishment against Luis Resto and his trainer. Both were brought to trial for assault, criminal possession of altered gloves, and conspiracy to commit a crime in sports. The final verdict of the New York Supreme Court found them guilty, sending them straight to prison. In October 1986, the boxer spent only 2.5 years in prison, while his trainer used his influence to get out earlier. Luis never returned to boxing and had to dedicate himself to other activities such as masonry, private security, and owning a gym after spending some time aimlessly and without direction. On the other hand, Carlos Panama Lewis, his trainer, never regained his license but somehow remained connected to boxing and even worked for Mike Tyson, among other pugilists. Despite being a victim of the dark side of boxing, Billy Collins Jr. fought not only against his opponents inside the ring, but also against the shadows of his own internal battles. Although his name has faded from the spotlight, the memories in his quest for redemption will forever remain in our hearts. Billy Collins' legacy echoes as a powerful reminder of the complexity of the human condition. His life offers a portrait that transcends the sport, delving into the many layers of the human spirit. His story is not just about victories and schemes within the ring, but it is about his inner journey as a fighter who sought redemption and faced the depths of the human soul. If you like this story, leave your like and suggest what you would like to see here on Strike Story. A hug